Second Kings, Second Kings, chapter 4, verses 1 to 7. It's a it's a well-known story. The the title for my presentation is called um, "What do you have in your house?" The reading is a well-known reading. It's taken from Second Kings chapter 4, verses 1 to 7. Verses 1 to 7. It reads, a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor is coming to take my two sons to be his slaves. So Elisha said to her, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she said, your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil. Then he said, go, borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels. Do not gather just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, then pour it into all those vessels and set aside the full ones. So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. Now it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said to her son, bring me another vessel. And he said to her, there is no other vessel. So the oil ceased. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, go sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons live on the rest. May the good Lord bless his holy word. Um, I would just like to share something that something from, I'll be only talking from one verse, and that is verse 2. This is when Elisha, when the lady, the woman, has explained her situation to Elisha, and then Elisha asked her, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she said, your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil. What lessons can we learn from that one verse? Um, One lesson, the first lesson that I learned from that verse is this: the first question that Elisha asked, what shall I do for you? I believe that should be the attitude of every Christian or every person who calls themselves Christian when somebody needs help. When we ask we ask them directly, ask them, what do you need? What do you want me to do? What can I do for you? Elisha did not see how rich or how poor she is. There is no, what's the word for it, favoritism. He did not judge her, through by the situation that she's going through. She wanted help. He's there. Who else is going? Who else is going? Who else is there to give her the help that she needs? She asked him, and he asked him back. He asked her back. What do you want me to do for you? Na Nayalo ni vevuke, eh? Nayalo ni vevuke. Which brings me to my next question. to the next question that Elisha asked. Tell me, what do you have in the house? We know the woman is going through a tough time. She has lost her husband, and then her sons are going to be taken to be slaves. The creditors are coming. That's like three different problems all at once, isn't it? And imagine the level of stress that she's in. Three problems at once. Sometimes when we go through problems, our judgment is clouded and we tend to focus on the problems. The woman, I believe she's so focused on her problem that she didn't realize that there is something inside her house, inside her home, that can help her. Sometimes we are like that, isn't it? We tend to focus on the problem more than we, as Christians, we do not use God as our first point of contact. And the way I see it is, this is like the 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 story of the Israelites in Exodus chapter 14. If you see Exodus chapter 14, verses 14, chapter 14, verses 14 and 15. It reads, "The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace." This is when the Israelites were on the shores of the Red Sea. The sea is in front of them, the Egyptians are behind them. Okay? And they were crying and they were complaining and they were asking Moses, "Why did you bring us here? Why do we have to die out here?" Right? And then what did God say in verse 15? And the Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward." Sometimes we tend to wait for God's time, but in reality, God is waiting for us to take that first step, isn't it? Just like this woman, she, if she had known that she had the solution in her home, she would have taken that first step. And but because her judgment is clouded by the circumstances that she's going through, she couldn't really make that decision. Just like in Matthew 14, 17, and 18, when the disciples they brought the loaves to Jesus. Okay, Matthew chapter 14, verses 17 to 18. I would start from verse 16. But Jesus said to them, "Do not they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." Verse 17, and they said to him, "We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish." He said, "Bring them here to me." Bring them here to me. If we look at the woman's situation, the struggle that she's going through, she would have brought her problem straight to God, isn't it? Just like, and God is right there waiting for her to help her. And in the end, Elisha is there, you know? I mean, and then Elisha asked her that question which I'd like to ask us, the UK Region 7 Day Adventist. What do you have in your house? Start with what you have in your house. If we look at creation, I'm just going to diverge on a tangent a little bit. If we look at creation, right? Now is we are coming up to Sabbath. Sun is out. Different colors are vibrating colors coming up: yellow, green, um, and then go into summer, and then we go into fall, and then we go into winter, and we can see that the season changes. All of that tells something about God, doesn't it? It shows us how creative God is. And if we think about the way that He created man in Genesis 1:26, where He said, "Let us make men in our image and in our likeness." And because He is a creative God, obviously He will put in us some sort of creativity. I would like to say imagination. Because let's just think about this. If he was to create, well, when he first thought about creation, it will be in his mind, isn't it? He would have imagined it, how the earth should look like, what should be contained in here, how should we do this, eh? From the beginning. And then that same creativity, and because he wanted to create man in his own image, obviously that might not be the same, but that level of creativity he will install or download into us. And that's what I believe. And this um and when it's done that, when we are faced with problems, we tend to look outside, but rather we God has already installed in us everything that we need to do his will. If you get what I mean. We Everything that we need to do his work, he has already given us. What we need to do is just like the disciples when they had the loaves and the fish, they gave it to Jesus. We take those abilities that he's given us and then we give it back to him. And because he told Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply, let him do the multiplication. We don't try and do it ourselves. Does that make any sense? Let him do the multiplication. We do his work. We bless others. He gets the glory. That's the way I believe that we should work, and I believe that is what you have also in mind. He's given us a different talents, right? We cannot all be singers. We cannot all be preachers. We cannot all be teachers. We cannot all be chefs or whatever job that you want to name. But there is something, there is a reason why we are here. And while we are still breathing, we need to figure out why we are here. He's already given us the abilities. We just need to give it back to him and or ask him, Father, like we talked about in the prayer session before this, during the AY. What do you want me to do? Eh? What do you want me to do? That's all we need to do. And then he will direct us. I remember when before I came to the Adventist church, I was talking with a reverend from the Church of England, where we were we were joining them, and then he asked me. We were talking, and then he asked me something. What do you see in your future? I said I don't know anything about my future, but I've asked God if this is exactly what I told God. What do you want me to do for you? And then he turned around and he said, then that's a very dangerous prayer. If we think about it, in a sense, it is dangerous because we don't know what we are walking into. But there is hope with the abilities that He has given us and with His protection. There's there's nothing else we can say. All we can say is just, I'm here. I surrender. I submit myself. You do what you want with me. You know, and we use the ability that He's given us um, to 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 do His work. You know, just like the woman, the story of the woman. You know, when Elijah asked her, she answered, "Your maid servant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil. All God needs is one jar, just one jar, one vessel to work with. He doesn't need like the story of Gideon, right? From 30,000, he cut the numbers down. 3,000. Oh, sorry, 300. Yeah? Nakaluwa isang ni Zakazako ko ni Willy Willy. He only works for or works with somebody who will stand beside him and stand for his truth, for his word. Huh? He doesn't care if you're the only one. If you're the only one, that is good enough for him. Hmm? Wherever we are, if you're the only one, wherever you are, if you are the only Seventh day Adventist, wherever you are, and you submit and give, and we give our lives to God, you're the only one in Wales, you're the only one in the South, the North, that's good enough for him. Just say yes. Eh? That woman, even though we might see like the woman, there is nothing in the house but a jar of oil. Sometimes we see ourselves, just because we come across someone who has high level of qualifications or is well known in our area. Lah, that woman said, "Oh no, there's nothing. I've only one jar." We tend to look down on ourselves. Eh? As Christians, sometimes as human beings, as we tend to see titles, positions as something. God doesn't care about that because God can elevate you whenever He wants if we listen. Eh? One jar is enough. Eh? And the the other lesson that I think I already talked about this is sometimes we can be overwhelmed with our circumstances. Eh? And it's and problems where we have the solution right in front of us. This happened to Hagar when she was when Abraham told her and Ishmael, right, you need to leave my house now. Huh? You need to leave. So they went into the desert, and then while they were in the desert, she left the child to die, put him in a bush, and then she did because she didn't want to see Ishmael to die. She set away from where she left Ishmael. But then the Bible says God opened her eyes, and then she saw a well of water. Just imagine the situation that she was in, chased out, nowhere to live, in the desert. Their water has run out at one bottle that they were given by Abraham, and then she was welling up. She couldn't see a well of water in front of her or beside her because she was welling up in her eyes. Yeah? And then God had to open her eyes to see it's just right there. We need to change our focus when we are faced with problems, and we all know where to focus to. Eh? Nakolotondo. God is the only source of strength, power, whatever um, is instilled in our hearts that we should do. We do it with a grateful heart, and um, that's it. In First Samuel chapter 17, this is just something I wanna show us. 1 Samuel chapter 17. This is when David heard that Goliath was um, was saying stuff about Israel's God, and he was mocking the Israelites. 1 Samuel chapter 17. Listen to what David said in verse 32. Then David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him." Eh? Kakunin do alalay balatan tamatango. Eh? Sometimes we focus so much on our problems that we think that the problem is gonna. No, we serve a God who is much more bigger than our problems. Eh? So all it takes is just one jar. Eh? One jar, say yes, and let God do the rest. Eh? So in closing, if we think about what we can achieve with the abilities that God has given us, eh? The creativities that He has already filled us with, imagine the shift that we can make in our, especially in our households. We start off with our households and the community that we live in, the counties, and even the UK. Huh? Um, just the other day, I saw on the online as this guy from, excuse me, from one of the other two Abrahamic religions, from the Islam faith. He was saying to the people in the UK, your churches are getting empty, and you are setting up clubs in the churches. You're selling up your churches, and we will buy them and we will change them into mosques. That should be a challenge for a Christian. Eh? I mean, people call this country a Christian country, but with God, nothing is impossible. Eh? Imagine, like I've said, imagine the shift that we can make, eh? When we use our God-given abilities. I mean, that is the purpose why we're here, isn't it? For God to use us as His tools to do His will. Eh? Think about the transformation that happens when we use these abilities that God has given us to go out into the mission fields and first proclaim the three angels' message, eh? And maybe other messages that God has given us to proclaim. Eh? We have different abilities, just like a body. A hand cannot be the brain. Teacher cannot be a. Huh? So all those different abilities they come together, and God as our source of power, we can be a force to be reckoned with God at the helm of the UK Fijian Adventist Church. Huh? Melu chukana kalu. Nakau bakambau tadi Sarnavia Rochkenta Tobo Vinaka. I just want to encourage everyone on the platform today. Whatever we're going through, it's not bigger than God. God is much, much bigger. Eh? We all go through problems. We all have problems. We all have weaknesses. We all have strengths. Eh? But we have a common denominator. We have the same Father. Eh? Obokomboto di sana via Rochkenta Tobo Vinaka. Unanga isula tala chikunango nango muna and nabukuni beliuta. Vinak. May God bless.
Thank you for that timely message. I hope that we've all learned something and it may have touched some people's hearts. And we may use it throughout this week, next week, starting tomorrow. Could I please ask Auntie Lela to on our next hymn, and after that, my dad to pray? Can I please ask if everybody could stand as we sing our last hymn?
Na kalam sa sama dalmas kalam semata kurangan atau may kimami bakalo malangin atau may Jesu Kristo na nito ni mami bakambul. May tada ke bakalo na kimani saraw na kabinani kuah na wale kurangan na itu ni ibe bakalo ngangataki na kabini kuah na kalo. Kuah na taka na ito ni bula. Isulia rani kimami may songko ni bata na kabini kuah na may matu wale artiko. Misi nungala na bir talanga na may matu wale ra. Sangan itu kurang na kalo talaki na bir na tama rati kumese purusi. Bina wale kurangan na namuni be warutaki na wale na loma ni mada o satu ngoma te kimami. Sala beta da kani kime kimuni. Jinjini muno kimami di tukina. Jinjini tabi kimami na ngaraba na kalau. Non rabuli na isoli soli. Sala beta da kani kime kimuni. Nabi bole kimami satama turanga na loma ni mada wa. Sabu kami ni mina ataka ni na tari da kina turanga na bulu bole bala tango. Mena mena tuli tiku turanga na bulongo. Mena ya da turanga na iba katangen ni gente. Nano muni bakatangen ni ganda na kulo. Pina wale uturangan na kabina ni kuwa. Na wale utalana no tombula na veli utaki. Na program ni lotu satu wani na kulo na lo muni bulo rongo sama sulakan kebe kebuni. Watalaki na turangan na kemba mena wale urtiki na bulo Julai. Pina wale uturangan no muni saliu. Pina wale no muni sabe waru utaki na kulo. Na wale uturangan na bikaken sar satu wani tu na itu tu ni lotu. Na lo muni amba kiongo. Na bodmu singin ting tangango na kulo. Na wale uturanga no mni na sule chiku na alo ni bengarabi. Na no mni na velu taki chiku turanga kena nduimbula ya ndundua. Kame na tareta ki chiku na turanga na no mni lotu. Mani na lo reindo ndonga kena kemuni. Na wale uturanga na kami kuwa. Kema mina besuka ke ani. Sakara mo mena bunu ana kalau. Kema mina taka na no mni singini baka zedeng. Singini baka zedeng ni si bulia. Membala kema mina tamata. Me kema mi baka zedeng kina. Kame kema mi baka na numa. No mni bulia na huru na lo mani ono na singa ko ni buka zengo ni kabitu ni singa. Pina wale uturanga na kabini kuwa na wale unratumbul na elders na nonratundibu wale andu dona kalau sama sulaka ni kibeke muni verto na elders orto vengarabi watalaki na verto na elders orto orto sa zengo na kalau iya orto kadibi chuku turanga merto liuta kana lo tuko sama ko ni na takin turanga ratumbul sala meta da kan kibeke muni na nonratu Dui boleh orto sataba na kalau bina wale uturanga dom ni na bebu ke chiko. Waktu saki be kim ni na ni mami dui boleh anu do. Kima mi tamate bala bala da. Kima mi tamata ngusun galing galewa. Kima mi do bona no mo ele bona ka. Kima mi do tukun kima mi do da ka wale bona ka. Senga ni ada wakin na be ka ni bokor bokor tekin na kalau. Sakira na no ni bebu soti. Kira turanga muni bo sota na ni mami dui bolo mol molu me dua. Sangke masu. Senga na da tani masuta na de chisun do doanga. Saya ada minimum misor ke ni mami bakambul. Amen.